even still to this day with 6 years in recovery, I still pause and look back and have to, like, reflect upon the life and the childhood that I was numbing.
Hi, all. It's Zoe here. Thanks for hanging out with me again today and joining the Surviving with Zoe podcast, a conversation where amazing, inspirational survivors from all walks of life share their personal stories and expert advocates educate you, our audience, in order to break stigmas and taboos regarding mental health and trauma, kind of like free therapy and permission to always give yourself grace and compassion as we are all ultimately just surviving every day. Before we dive in, we would like to add a trigger warning for anyone who is vulnerable to particular issues. Please pause if needed and check out our timestamps in our description if you need to skip ahead. Lastly, if you could please hit the subscribe button and follow us on Spotify, Apple, Instagram, and TikTok. We would really appreciate it since we are a new pod and need all the love we can get. And of course, you will be helping to amplify our amazing guest voices. Today's guest on Surviving with Zoe is Sunshine, a trailblazing psychic medium, spiritual advisor, and the founder behind the Sovereign Phoenix, a spiritual recovery community for witches. Known as the pink-haired sobered witch, Sunshine turns her sobriety journey into a powerful spiritual path, helping others heal through ritual, magic, and radical self-love. She's also a Reiki Master, a high priestess, and the voice behind multiple podcasts, including The Ritual Hour. Her story is one of resilience, recovery, and reclaiming power. And I can't wait for you guys to hear it. Welcome to Surviving with Zoe, Sunshine.
Hi, Zoe. I'm so happy to be here today.
Um, okay. Sunshine, I'm so excited to have you on today. And I love that you shared with me that it was your 6-year anniversary. Just last Thursday, I believe. And I'm really excited to hear all things astrology, witchy, psychic, and mediums. It's kind of a guilty pleasure for me. But first, you have such an inspiring story. In 2019, you turned your recovery into purpose. But before that time, can you tell our listeners what led you down a path of substance abuse and what sparked your sobriety journey? And just tell us your story in your own words.
Yeah, I've shared this story quite a few times, and I think everybody's a little bit surprised to hear when it started. And, even today, every single year on my anniversary, I kind of reflect and take a look and see. And I think I'm still shocked. And this started my first taste of alcohol that I recall and remember seeking alcohol started around the age of 8 years old.
Wow.
Yeah. I grew up in a household with an alcoholic. My father was an alcoholic,
Mm.
still, is an alcoholic. Doesn't exactly admit it. But yeah, he was a rum and coke drinker. And every night, there's very few evenings throughout my childhood or even my adult life that I would have known where he wouldn't have a rum and coke, at least one every night. And we're not talking about a shot in a little, in a glass of coke. We're talking about, 2 to 3 shots within a splash of coke. And if he had 1 or 2 drinks and he didn't finish one, he would leave it around the house, and so I can remember I have this very distinctive memory of how our living room was set up, and we had an end table next to our couch and this glass of, half-finished glass of rum and coke sitting there,
Yeah.
and walking up to it and smelling the rum in there and picking up and finishing it.
Oh my gosh.
And doing so because I knew the way it was gonna make me feel. I knew the warmth that it was gonna feel as it went down. I knew the sugary taste that it was gonna have. And, I have a lot of memories in childhood from that point forward trying to seek alcohol. And I
Mm.
don't think I knew at that particular time why I was seeking it, that I was seeking it because of the way that it made me feel or the way it made me unfeel is probably a better way to describe it. But
Yeah.
It started then, and, by the time I was 11 years old, I was sneaking the alcohol from my parents' house, right?
Mhm.
I would pour or make myself a drink, and this wasn't, like, daily or anything,
Mhm.
but it's enough that I would remember. It was every so often. I started to figure out which one of my friends' parents had liquor cabinets
Right.
and would start to encourage my friends, "Let's drink."
Mhm.
Right? By the time I was 16, I was trying to make sure that my friend circles were the circles that were drinkers. And by the time I was, 17, 18, I was hanging out with the friends where we would actively drive into, I live around I grew up in the city of Detroit. So we would drive to the not so good areas of
Mhm.
Detroit and find people to either buy us liquor, or I'll be real honest, would drive to the drug spots and buy dime bags,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I have been drinking since the age of 8. I was smoking pot since the age of 16, and I actively sought these things out. I
Mhm.
actively sought these things out for a long time. And even still to this day with 6 years in recovery, I still pause and look back and have to, like, reflect upon the life and the childhood that I was numbing from.
Right. That's
Yeah.
very profound, that sentence, like, the childhood that you were numbing. It sounds like you weren't even able to experience a
Mhm.
childhood, essentially. Um
No, no, it's and I think a lot of us that have experienced childhood, whether it's neglect or abuse or both,
Mhm.
right? Neglect is a form of abuse, I suppose you could say. I think a lot of
Mhm.
people would say the same thing. But, I look back and there was times where I can remember I have a brother that's 5 years older than me. I can remember
Mhm.
having to, like, parentify my brother,
Right.
take care of him, take care of my mother, try to protect my mother. My father, as an alcoholic, just has a hard time understanding the level of abuse that he
Mhm.
afflicted on the entire household.
Yeah.
That the all three of us lived in fear,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
And yeah, like, it was, and then I've come to understand, not only was I a child growing up in this severely abusive household, I was a child psychic
Mhm.
growing up in a severely abusive household that was being bombarded by my father's both spoken and unspoken anger
Mhm.
and unexpressed emotion, my brother's fear, my mother's fear. So here I am, not understanding how to handle any of what I'm feeling. And anytime I personally expressed any feeling, I was ridiculed. I was um, yelled at and shamed for expressing feelings.
Mhm.
Right? Like, how they often say how boys shouldn't cry, boys shouldn't show feelings. I wasn't, as a girl, allowed to
Mhm.
either.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's crazy. I mean, I feel like children of abusive households, I relate to you so much when you said that you were in charge of parentifying your parents and your brother. Like, you kind of my therapist explained this to me that when we're kids, because no one's guiding us, that we create almost like a parent voice, not only for other people around us, but for ourselves, that we still to do to this day, to make sure we're on track and we're getting things done. And, you know, also, what a shame that you had these feelings that you wanted to express. And as a child of neglect and danger and violence, I would imagine, you are always self aware and looking out for what's happening. I mean, some people have described knowing what steps that their parents take when they come home. It's like, are they walking too fast? Are they slamming a door? Um, can you talk to us a little bit more about how you endured that time and how you protected yourself?
Mm. I think that's spot on. Routine. You
Mm,
understand how to establish routine. Right, and even still to this day, I'm phenomenal at routine. I am from my
mhm.
from a corporate America perspective when I was still in it, from a systems and operation
Yeah.
perspective, oh, I am excellent, right? I am, superior compared to a lot of folks, and I think a lot of people that grew up in,
Yeah.
like, chaos and trauma
The
are.
type A.
Oh, man, are we. We are just spectacular at it. We're like, "You
Mhm.
need to figure out how to get something done in chaos. Let us help
Let
you.
me take
Find
this.
somebody that grew up in trauma."
Right.
Um, my god. Yeah, the routine, and, so it's like, for me, it was, um, you know my dad, like, there was very, very structured. My dad got home from work at between 4 and, like, 4:10, and so you had to be
Mhm.
home, and if you
Yeah.
weren't home, you were gonna get your ass handed to you,
Yeah.
right?
Mm.
And so you had to be home, and, like, literally, the neighborhood knew this. Like, I was made fun of because if I wasn't home, my dad would get onto the front porch, and my name was yelled out into the
Mhm.
neighborhood,
Yeah.
right? I mean, the only time I ever remember, like, corporal punishment
Yeah.
growing up, physical, like, like,
Mhm.
my father was not physically abusive to most of
Mhm.
us. My brother, another story.
Mhm.
But the only time corporal punishment was inflicted on me, he found me around the corner when he got home, with barefoot, riding my bike in the street, wearing my mom's makeup.
Mhm.
In other words, being a child,
Yeah.
okay? And I got the belt taken to me.
Mhm.
Um So yeah, you were home and you helped make dinner. By the time I was 11, I made dinner. So dinner was
Yeah.
ready by the time my father got home, right?
Wow.
And at that particular point, after dinner was ready, it was a matter of knowing and understanding what else needed to be done. Like, were
Mhm.
we going somewhere? Did we have sports? Did we have Girl Scouts? It was like very rigid, right? I look
Mhm.
back, and like I
Mhm.
was in high school and I'm, like, mind blown on this because I say I'm a recovering alcoholic as well as a recovering workaholic. In
Mm.
high school, I was going to high school and working 30 hours a week at
Yeah.
some point because I was so used to having every hour of my day in routine.
Yeah.
Right? In routine, because even for my father, that's what he did. He woke up at 4:30 every single morning.
Mhm.
He went, right? And he would like had everything scheduled until the point that he would drink, and then he would drink until he fell asleep, and then he would do it all over again.
Right.
Right? I mean,
Yeah.
so that's how you survived. And when I was
Mhm.
given the luxury of being left alone,
Mhm.
I lost myself in books. I
Oh,
devoured books.
what type of books?
Oh, any type of. My favorite book, and I've read this book even as an adult a handful of times, was A Wrinkle in Time by
I
Madeline
love that.
Lange.
I
Oh,
love
love
that.
it.
Yeah.
Love that book so much. So any kind of like daydreamy, make believe. There's
Mhm.
another one called The Little Princess that I really, really loved a whole lot. And I have this very visceral memory of being in the library of my childhood, like library of my
Mhm.
school, and like taking the book out. This is such a weird memory.
Mhm.
And seeing, like, right, we had library cards, like
Yeah.
the in there, and seeing and being so proud to see my name being like one of only 5 names that had
Yeah.
ever taken. Like 3 of the names were mine, and I was like, "I'm gonna check
Yeah.
it out again," right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and
I
so I
mean,
did, and
yeah.
anything I could get my hands on, I
Mhm.
would. And, I was lucky that my family was middle class, so my parents would every time we had the book fair come around at school, I would get, like, 15 to $20 that I could buy books with, and yeah, so routine was what helped me, and books.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, there needs to be studies on trauma survivors as kids, um, and what you said about being a workaholic, because um, I know so many people who also like kept themselves busy when they were in these chaotic environments. I mean, in Australia, you're allowed to start working pretty young at like 14.
Mm.
And I started working at like 12. I always had like two jobs at a time. And I'm sure you can relate because it's like better to be out of the home
Yep.
than at home. And the routine is amazing. And also what you said about reading books, like it's kind of like a form of escapism
Yep.
from your shitty life at the time. So like it's kind of like therapy as a child almost. So
Yeah.
thank you for sharing that with me. Do you mind me asking where was your mother during
Mm.
these times?
God, my heart breaks to even say it. She was being just as abused.
Yeah.
Yeah, she
Mm-hmm.
was being just as abused. And her and I have had a lot of conversations in the
Mm-hmm.
last year. After I stepped into recovery, it was hard. And I had to go no contact with both of my parents, and I just
Mm-hmm.
reconciled with my mom a year ago.
Mm-hmm.
And she asked me, she's like, why are we talking again? And I said, because I've come to understand that you were just as abused by
Yeah.
dad as Michael and I were,
Mm-hmm.
as my brother and I were,
Mm-hmm.
and I can't hold you
Mm-hmm.
accountable. I mean, my father had my mom institutionalized. And when I say institutionalized, I mean had her committed to the psychiatric ward. I believe it was 3 times throughout my childhood. 3 times. And you want to hear this story, how wild this is. I'm going to
Yeah.
tell you one of these instances that is so
Sure.
wild. These psychic gifts that I have run in my family. They are deep. They are very extensive, like lineage wise, right? I believe the witch runs in my family for lifetimes. And
Mm-hmm.
my mom has these gifts, and her mom had these gifts. And so my mom is working at this place, and I'm like 7 years old. And my mom comes home and she tells my dad, I think that they are listening to me. I think that they are listening to me. Like there's something going on. I just don't feel right. I think that they're listening to
Mm-hmm.
me. And it like telling him over and over again, and you're just being paranoid. You're just being
Mm-hmm.
paranoid. You're just being, and it's like weighing on her a lot to the point that it's now starting to impact her mental health. So what does my father do? Instead of listening to his wife, who he loves and supposedly should trust and support and be
Mm-hmm.
on her side, he has her committed for paranoia.
Mm-hmm.
I'm 7 years old at that point, right? I'm told that she has asthma and has to go in and have asthma treated, right? Because 'Cause we're a family of liars. If
Yeah.
you didn't know that about, like, addict households and
Mm-hmm.
alcoholic households, like,
Yeah.
some family of liars. Um, Fast forward to I'm 22 years old, and I get a job at the place that my mom used to work for.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm there for about 9 months, and there's a woman there, and she and I become friends.
Mm-hmm.
And she goes, "Sunshine, I gotta tell you something." I said, "What?" She goes, "It's been weighing on me for years."
Mm-hmm.
She goes, "Your mom, I remember when she worked here." I said, "Yeah? I know she worked here." She goes, "Well, I just gotta let you know that back when she did, they had me listening in on her calls."
What?
Yeah. So in other words, my mom was right on. My mom's intuition was picking up that they were watching her. This
Mhm.
facility had a number of very, very lucrative patents. They had like a very big, like, a lot of scientific type of stuff that they were doing. She was in an executive admin position. She was privy to a lot of
Mhm.
private and confidential information. And
Yeah,
they had this woman who was highly trusted by the CEO of the organization listening into her calls because they thought
that
that she
sounds so illegal. Like
it it was, but lo and behold, here,
Mm,
my father, who should have been supporting
mhm,
and trusting his wife. Yeah.
mhm. And, like, women are incredibly intuitive. It's one of
Mhm.
our powers, like, it's been scientifically proved as well, like and also, like, we're told now to trust our gut, like, if we sense danger.
Yep.
But back then, mental health was taboo, you know?
Yeah.
Um and also psychic abilities, and witches, were viewed in a different light back then. Like, people
Yeah.
are more open now.
Yeah.
When I think of, your mum sharing these things about herself, what a tragedy that, her partner didn't support her during
Mhm.
that time, and that it led to being committed multiple times. Like, and how traumatic for you to not have your mother in your home, and where is she? You know what I mean? And you talked about having to go no contact with your parents. Um, a lot of people who don't come from unstable families, they are either judgmental of people who go no contact, or they just don't understand it. They have zero empathy. Um, can you tell me how it benefited you to go no contact with both of your parents?
Yeah. I think you're spot on. There's a lot of people, and I did. I got flack even from family members that they themselves have grown up in trauma and, toxic relationships and abusive, like, yeah, same thing, not understanding. Um, I've shared this even with my mom. Like, I needed the time and space to understand, to be able to explore without interruption, without
Mhm,
this these this feeling. I needed to heal the guilt and the shame
mhm.
that comes from, feeling like I'm at their, like, beck and call.
Yeah.
Like, that my life is for them.
Mhm.
Like, that
Yeah.
I owe my life to them, so to speak,
Yeah.
right? And so you become I don't I don't know that all families are like this. I'm sure that there is a very healthy way that people are raised where this enmeshment doesn't happen, but we were enmeshed. Right?
Mm,
We've just become enmeshed, and my father almost lost his life. There's a lot of things that
mhm,
happened there, right? He drank himself to the point his body was almost gone, right?
mhm.
He went through a very drastic and invasive surgery, and then a year later had a heart transplant. And then it
Wow.
just all of this stuff. And I was like, I need time, I need space.
Mm,
Um, and it it was so important for me to have that because it allowed me to start to see and understand all of the abuse.
mhm,
And I remember, I was in therapy at the time, and I it was probably like 3 months after I decided to go no contact. My therapist and I were talking, and I was like, "Jackie, I don't I don't think we have anything to talk about anymore."
mhm. Which is
She's
such
like,
a great moment in therapy.
I mean, I really didn't, like,
Yeah,
we didn't like, we'd had sessions every 2 weeks at that point for years,
yeah.
and now that I wasn't talking about I didn't have this enmeshment with my parents, I didn't have this, like, energetic connection, that I had given
Mhm,
myself the permission to take this time
mhm.
and space to just heal and feel and understand what it was like to be me. And
Yeah.
don't get me wrong,
Mhm.
I had tried my hardest to separate from them in the past,
Yeah.
but the reality was, even though I had set boundaries in the past, my father always violated them.
Right.
And so this time going no contact was me making the decision to say, I'm no longer going to accept you violating me.
Mhm. Yeah.
And I can't believe me saying that out loud, what that just meant.
Yeah.
Like me just saying that out loud. That's Zoe, that was, like, really a big deal to just hear me say
Mm.
that.
Yeah, I could tell. It's like, I feel like something just shifted, like, in your, like, energy, like, and you got quite emotional. So,
It was,
yeah. Yeah,
right?
I
Like,
think
that's
it's so important to, like, say what you needed to say as a child, you
yeah,
know, as an adult. And, um, so tell me a little bit about what that means to you to say that.
yeah. So, and I'll unpack that as to why. So
Mhm.
I went no contact, and over the course of that time, I was with a partner who was also struggling with addiction.
Mhm.
And not to share his story, but he passed. And
Mm.
he had been close to, while he was still on this earth, he'd gotten close to my parents.
Right.
And so 2 years ago, I had a memorial for him. And
Mhm.
at this particular point, it had been 2 years that I hadn't talked to my parents.
Yeah.
And for some reason, my father thought it was appropriate to show up at my house for this memorial.
Mhm.
And he shows up and acts as though nothing was wrong
Yeah.
and is trying to like BS with me and
Mhm.
just engage and trying to ask about my life. We haven't talked in
Mhm.
2 years. Hasn't isn't
Yeah.
isn't isn't sharing, like, talking about my ex-partner, like, none of this is, like, trying to get into my life, just like the rug was up and just trying to sweep
Yeah.
2 years, or I should say the rug is up and trying to sweep 44 years
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
of shit underneath
Yeah.
it, and I was just like, "Wow." Right? And it before he leaves, he's like, "Give me a call sometime," you know? And I said, "I'll think about it." And he's like, "No,
Mhm.
really, give me a call sometime." I said, "Again, I told you I'll think about it." And he starts trying to cry. When he starts to cry, and he's like, "I don't think you understand how hard this is."
Mhm.
And I was like,
Well,
right?
you're at your partner's memorial
Memorial.
grieving, and by the way, thank you for sharing that with me. That is I'm so sorry that, your
Right.
partner passed, and, this is again, it goes back to parentifying as a child of neglect and trauma and abuse, right? It's like, you can't even have your moment of stillness and quietness to grieve. Oh, guess what? You have to take care of your parents' emotions and their
Yeah.
struggles. And I'm sure that's why you went no contact because who was taking care of yours?
Oh, yeah, yeah. I mean, 100%. And so I blew up. I blew up. I went and I grabbed my mom, I grabbed my dad, and I blew up at the 2 of them, and not pretty, not and so the next day, I sent a video apology and, 30-minute video apology and just said, like, kind of shared some of, like, why I'd gone no contact and,
Mhm,
some of the abuse that of growing up, um
mhm,
and it was 5 days later, Zoe, as I'm laying in bed with my partner, and we had just listened to this, like, beautiful, like, shamanic drumming meditation,
mhm,
and he's holding me, and I'm feeling so safe and so loved, and I have the repressed memory of my father sexually abusing me come up
mhm.
for the first
Yeah,
time.
yeah. And like you said, it was when you felt safe
Yeah,
and when you were away from the
yeah,
toxicity. And, years ago, people didn't believe in repressed memories. Like,
yeah,
it was, like, such a taboo. But now it's actually very common for children of abuse to remember in their 30s and their 40s because their brains are developed and we have more stability in our lives. So if you're comfortable sharing about that, um, then please share with us what that felt like and that experience.
it was it was so wild, right? I was and this is why I say that moment of me saying that out loud, like, going no contact
Mhm,
was this time of me no longer
mhm,
allowing him to violate me, right? And
yeah,
that's because of this, like, I didn't realize it at that point, but that was the first time
mhm,
that I put my foot down to say, like, "You no longer are allowed in my space. You don't have permission anymore."
mhm, yeah,
Right? Because for whatever reason, my entire life, he always thought as though that was he was allowed,
right.
right? And so I'm laying there in bed and, it's as a psychic, I get vision all the time. And so I'm in this like kind of, you know, slightly trance state because of the meditation and I'm warm and it's lovely. And, as a child, I have these frankly, very beautiful memories of my father coming into my room,
Mhm.
and if I was upset or couldn't sleep, he would tickle my back to help me fall asleep.
Mhm.
And that's at first the visual memory that as it starts.
Mhm.
But then the memory that it switches to is he's drunk and I can smell the alcohol on his
Mhm.
breath, and that touch is not a tickle on my back anymore.
Mhm.
It turns to more sexual touches.
Mhm.
And it continues on to more visions of at some point me ask him coming to bed and me asking for him to touch me like that.
Mhm. And just for our listeners who are not really educated in childhood sexual abuse, there's just been so much education since, the 80s and 90s about children, how they react and how any person of any age reacts to sexual abuse. It's a bodily function,
Oh, yeah.
right? And it's biological. And there's been lots of studies, and the main common denominator that people don't know about predators and groomers is that they have to create a level of trust and love with their victim. So, this is quite common for victims to, you know, so and so enjoy and experience pleasure, um, but they don't know what's happening. We don't know what's happening as children. You didn't know what was happening, right?
No, I mean,
So
as a child, all you
Mhm,
know is the facts. I mean, that's the reality of it. You have an individual around you, that individual loves you, they
mhm,
are touching you, and the touch feels
mhm.
pleasurable. That's all you know,
Yes.
right?
Yep.
You know the facts. You have no
Mhm.
clue at that moment that it's not appropriate.
Yeah.
Right? But here's the thing that became really, like, horrid for me. This is the
Mhm,
thing that really became the
mhm,
traumatic event.
mhm,
And I say this,
mhm,
is because this particular time when I asked him, he wasn't drunk.
mhm,
And I asked him, and he
mhm,
became horrified and ashamed,
mhm,
and now no longer started to connect with me,
mhm,
and started to withdraw from me, and started to actually shame me.
mhm,
And so now I started to get all of these other memories of how his treatment towards me started to
mhm.
become different.
Right. It's very narcissistic as an abuser to you have caused this abuse and you see your victim as an extension of yourself. They don't, you know, there's a kind of feeling that a lot of children of abuse, myself included, feel like we didn't feel like our body belonged to us. And that takes years and years to undo and still manage. It doesn't go away. And
Yeah.
that's why you got so emotional saying, "You're not allowed to violate me," because it's you saying, "Actually, my body is mine and it's not yours." And so, how confusing as a child, because children see abuse as love, to
Yeah.
be feeling loved or attention. And then all of a sudden, you're being told that you're the problem
Yeah.
and that it's a shameful, thing to do as if you caused it or even
Yeah.
understand what sex is,
Yeah.
like
Oh, yeah.
any
Yeah.
sexual matter is.
Yeah. And there's a whole slew of memories that I assume will continue to surface over the, years that still, I get these, and I don't know if you have, but like these.
Mhm,
It's these fuzzy and these tingles, like, where I know something's there, and this is, like, the wildest thing is though I've known, right? I had sexual fantasies as a child of somebody coming into my room and doing things like this to me, like,
mhm,
older, right? When, like, I
mhm,
was 9, 10, 11,
mhm.
12, like, older I got, like, multiple sexual fantasies
Right.
for a long time,
And it's
of se
like where did that come from? It's not like, you're watching adult pornography, like, it's like you're reading books about the little
Years of
princess and, escaping into fiction, and all of a sudden, all these things, like, that doesn't
Mhm.
sit right. And children don't lie.
No.
So
Years
that's
of
yeah.
therapy, talking to therapists about, this, and they agreed, and, we would go through and we would kind of, like, navigate the, like, family circle,
Mhm.
right? And see, like, even somatically, I had some really beautiful therapists
Mm,
that were a little ahead of their time and see somatically, was it so and so? What was my response,
mhm,
Never in a million years did I ever, ever, ever consider it would have
mhm.
been my father.
Yeah. And
Never.
it's become so much more like socially acceptable for people to have repress memories. Like in this day and age, it's there's books written on it. Like it's so common, and they can be very scary and
Oh, yeah.
uncomfortable. And I'm sure that it was kind of probably annoying for you because you've healed and you've gone to therapy, and now it's like, oh well, now I have to manage these new sensations and visions coming through. And what if something triggers that? Like, what if you're like at work one day and something just like pops up? Like, and I found it really interesting that you were talking about, um, like reenacting these fantasies because or like envisioning them, you said, because when you're abused, you reenact these dynamics with
Mhm.
partners as you get older, and you don't even know that you're doing it, and it takes you years to break the patterns. Um, so in your home, you've experienced alcoholism, physical abuse, emotional abuse, sexual abuse. Um, you are parentifying your family, seeing your mum go through terrible abuse. Um, when you started leaning into alcoholism and substance abuse yourself, how did that numb the pain for you?
Ah. You know, I think it's interesting. It's not that it just numbed the pain. It like
Mm,
puts a mask on and allows you to be
mm,
someone that you're not,
mm,
right? So I'm no longer the abused girl that has to remain quiet and pretend like everything's fine.
mm,
I'm someone else, right? I'm the party girl. I'm the, promiscuous, you know, hottie that likes to
mm,
flirt with guys. I'm the,
mm,
pothead that loves to wax philosophical. I'm
mm,
the girl that can throw back and, drink you under the table. I'm whoever else that I want to be, but I
mm, yeah.
don't have to be that abused, shy girl that, was told to be quiet and, that was told to like be something that they weren't.
That is so interesting because I don't know a lot about alcoholism and substance abuse. I just feel like I got like an education from you on it. And I'm kind of curious, um, while you were under the influence, was there like ever an element of like truth within inside you that like you knew that it was wrong, or was it like you were in complete denial?
I think there is this part of me that always knew I was seeking something else. I was
Mhm.
trying to find who I really was,
Mhm.
right? But I think every addict is going to tell you that they're trying to find that person.
Mm.
And it's only in recovery that they're gonna realize that it's not at the bottom of a bottle, and it's not
Mhm.
at the end of a joint, or at the end of a
Mhm.
pipe, or at the end of a needle,
Mhm.
or anything like that, right? But I don't think in active addiction, we really truly, feel like we're doing something wrong. There are
Mhm.
these glimpses that this isn't me,
Mm.
right? But I'm trying to find who I am, if that makes sense.
Oh, it totally makes sense. I mean, like, if you take away the addiction part, I feel like a lot of listeners could relate to, like, trying on a costume to be something that you're not in life, and having that, like, element of, like, I'm playing a part right now, like, but maybe I don't know that this is wrong, but this is how it's a coping mechanism because I do, because I'm lost and I don't know who I am. Like, but in your experience, um, would you say that you are like a high functioning addict? Because you've had
Oh.
quite the life, like you've done so many things. So I would guess that.
Spectacularly high
Yeah.
functioning, I've won awards,
Mhm.
I, for the majority of my adult life, was making 6 figures, highly
Mhm.
respected throughout my the
Mhm.
industry that I worked in. Yeah, absolutely, 100%. I mean, that's the caveat. When people hear about addiction, right, they go and they think about the worst of addiction. They think
Mhm.
about, the alcoholic underneath the bridge with the brown paper bag and the bottle. They think about the individual that's squatting in a crack house. They think about
Mhm.
the individual that is lost everything, and the only thing that they're chasing is their next high. They're
Mhm.
missing the addicts that are like spectacular at masking, right? That have just, could win a Grammy for their performance, of masking, right? Like,
Yeah.
should be given, an Oscar for just, next best actor or actress,
Mhm.
right? They're forgetting about there's a high probability that you have someone in your circle right now,
Mhm.
a high probability. I don't know what the statistic. I can't remember, but I mean, we're talking to like 1 out of 6 individuals is going to
Mhm.
be like a high functioning addict.
Yeah.
And I think it's important that people realize we often think of addiction as being substance use, right? We think about it just as being alcohol or drugs,
Mhm.
right? And we often think about it being as alcohol and illicit drugs. It
Mhm.
can also be Adderall. It can be
Yeah.
opiates,
Yeah.
right? It could be chasing the way that we look. Like let's be real. We've got this whole craze on the weight loss drug industry right
Mhm.
now. You don't think that's a mask that people are putting on?
Mhm.
Chasing some way that we're gonna look,
Yeah.
right? It
Mm.
can be codependency. It
Yeah.
can be chaos and drama,
Yeah.
right? It can be the soccer mom that's chasing around and constantly trying to keep themselves, that they're the appearance of the world
Right.
so that their kids and their family look like they're top notch.
Yeah.
Addiction shows and rears its head in all
Yeah.
sorts of different ways.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, honestly, you mentioned so many different types of addiction, and my mind was just racing, thinking of all the successful people that I envision as successful and not flawed. And, even talking about childhood abuse, like people think that families of childhood abuse are like weird or like, like poor or something. And it's like you and I both come from middle class families. And I'm sure that there was a presentation of our families on the outside to look normal, to look successful, to look like we're the Joneses. Yeah. So it is interesting that the addiction was high functioning. And I wanted to ask, you mentioned like eating disorders, right? And I know that you have a little bit of a history there
Mhm.
that you've shared with me offline. Are you able to talk to us about that?
Yeah. Oh, man. This is one. It was even in topic in conversation this morning. I think food addiction and disordered eating is probably
Mhm,
one of the more challenging ones because we
mhm,
literally require food to survive.
Mhm.
And I remember I've had many conversations with my therapist throughout the year about this one. And I will tell you, this is probably also the scariest one for me. And so,
Mhm.
just another big trigger warning piece. I
Mhm.
have this memory, and I've shared this with my partner, and even shared this with my partner again for in another flavor. I told myself, I think I was like 10 or 11 years old, that if there's so I have a short and stout body, and so
Mhm.
I technically have a second boob, right? I have my breasts, and then I get another roll that I've had partners grab, and they're like, "Oh," and I'm like, "That is not my breasts, right? That's my fat roll." And, and so I told myself when I was like 10 or 11 years old that if that ever gets bigger than my belly, I'm gonna kill myself,
Mm. Yeah.
right? I was in Weight Watchers at the age of 6 years old.
Oh
My
my
dad had my
god.
mom taking me to Weight Watchers at the age of 6 years old,
Mhm.
right? I mean, I have been judged for my weight, and it's not uncommon. There's a lot of, um, articles and stories, and, people that I've now been talking about, that when you have childhood abuse, especially sexual abuse, where the physical body has been violated,
Yes.
that weight will be a
Stay.
protector.
Yeah.
Yeah, it'll stay, right?
Mhm.
It's a way.
Yeah.
It's like that fat is literally an insulator, right?
Yeah.
So if the body is gonna protect itself, why not go ahead and put,
Yeah.
fat on it?
Yeah.
And so, yeah, food has always been a really interesting thing. And I have, I've been diagnosed just from a clinical perspective with a handful of things, throughout my
Mm.
life. I have hypothyroidism, Hashimoto's, which is an autoimmune disorder,
Yeah.
PCOS, which is an endocrine
Mhm.
disorder. Both of those things, all three of those things, make it very difficult and complicated to be able to ever lose weight,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Um, and so, yeah, like food in and of itself has been probably my most complex when it comes to understanding, because you can't just stop it.
Yeah.
You have to eat. And so
Mhm.
I'm very, very blessed that I've met an incredible somatic nutritionist that I've
Mhm.
been working with for a couple of years that has helped so much. I mean, I'm so incredibly blessed, and that my relationship with food has changed so
Mhm.
dramatically, and I feel so much more, comfortable. But the reality is, we live in a world, and I've asked this question, and this may, I'd be really curious, for you or even any of your
Mhm.
listeners, just to
Yeah.
ask yourself, what would our world be like if none of us could see?
Hmm. That I've, like, never thought of that question before. Like, that
What would our
how did that come up for you?
Because, I think, say, like mirrors, right? If we
Mhm.
never had the existence of mirrors, would we ever really judge ourselves? We would
Mm.
never see our reflection unless we saw it in our reflection in water.
Right.
Right? We
Yeah.
would never see our reflection, You talk about social media or pictures or anything of that nature. Would we
Mhm.
be in such a place of, disrest with our own self-image if we didn't have
Mhm.
our own self-image reflected back to us so often,
Absolutely. I mean,
right?
like, being, like, a plus size woman myself, like, I always see like the norms of women's bodies like in the medieval ages or you know whenever that it was like totally normal to be curvaceous and not have a flat stomach, and you see celebrities being criticized for not having a flat stomach, and it's disgusting how much the women's body hasn't been researched. Like, we have a uterus, like,
Mhm.
that's why our stomachs aren't flat. So yeah, I think, like, thinking back then, they didn't have social media. They
No.
didn't have, these crazy beauty expectations, and I mean, they had misogyny, but I mean,
Yeah.
they still had things, but is very detrimental to our mental. Don't think you're alone in the fact that you've had suicidal thoughts or ideations about wanting to escape from your own body. And I'm sure all of those immune complications that you have are linked to neglect, childhood abuse. It's always a
Yeah.
circle.
Yeah.
And I believe I read that endometriosis as well is linked to childhood abuse. Like there are just so many common denominators, and yet you're still judged in a way for not losing weight. Like just stop eating or go to Weight Watchers is like what society says. Like, I mean, for Gen Z and younger millennials who didn't grow up with Weight Watchers, you are lucky. Like, we all saw our mums go to Weight Watchers, and in your case, you went to Weight Watchers at 6 years
I
old.
was 6 years old. I had to stand on a scale in front of a group of individuals.
How
That's what
was
it
that
was.
allowed? I didn't know
I
that.
don't know.
Yeah,
I think about this sometimes and I'm just kind of horrified. And I've told some people this and they're like, "You're kidding me. You were 6 years old." And I said, "Yeah, I was 6 years old." I
yeah,
mean, it's this horrifying thought to think of. And I look back and as a child, was I chubby? Yeah, but I wasn't like overweight. I mean,
mm,
I was sure doctors and everything, but like I was adorable. I was just
yeah.
flipping adorable. Let's be
You were
real. I was adorable.
growing as
I,
well, though. Like,
yeah.
children who participate in like exercise can stunt your, progression in like puberty, like and all of those things. I just want to shift gears a little bit back to talking about your addiction recovery because it's such a big part of your story and surviving that. Um, was there a moment where you felt like you had had enough? Like you were like, "I don't wanna do this anymore?" Or was there lots of moments? Was there like one defining moment?
Yeah. You know, I've been thinking about this past week. So I stepped in recovery from alcoholism in 2019. But when I look back, I really started this like recovery journey when I decided to leave my ex-husband and step out of an
Mhm.
abusive marriage.
Right.
And so him and I attempted almost an entire years of couples counseling.
Mhm.
And he was abusive. He was emotionally abusive, didn't want to admit it. And asking him to finally leave, I think really which was 10 years ago this year,
Yeah.
right? That set like this whole kind of trajectory,
Mhm.
this whole kind of shift and change. And so from
Mhm.
there, there's all of these things that began to change. So I
Mhm.
left him and then I met the partner that had passed away. And I
Mhm.
started to like that partner, he himself had his own addiction issues, but he taught me what it was like to actually be loved, like
Yeah.
for just who I was and to not
Yeah.
judge and to like
Mhm.
what it was like to be
Mhm.
safe with someone and protected
Mhm.
by someone. And then my father almost lost his life because of alcoholism. And I realized in that whole thing, like how precious life was and how important it was. This is a wild, you might, man, talk about a crazy thing. My father, he drank himself to the point that his heart was operating at 6%, his liver and his kidneys were shutting down, and he had the option of going onto hospice, or he could have this majorly invasive surgery where they implanted a pump in his heart,
Mhm.
and he was on, like, literally, like, battery power,
Yeah.
okay? And he decided to go that route, and it was
Mhm.
very intensive surgery and a very intensive recovery, and so he's in recovery, and he's telling me and my mom is telling me, and I had to take a 2.5 month, almost 3-month leave of absence from my job
Mhm.
in order for them to approve his surgery,
Mhm.
right? And the doctors and the nurses are like, "Is she in medicine? Like, what like, she's amazing," and all this kinda stuff, and so I, like, literally started to research going back to medical school,
Yeah.
and I'm like, was really, like, kinda gung ho, like, I wanted to make a difference in the world, I wanted to help
Yeah.
people, I wanted to heal people, and I am in his recovery, in his hospital room, and so I'm sitting there and telling my mom, and I proceeded to tell my dad, and my dad
Mhm.
starts crying, and
Mhm.
I was like, "Why are you crying?" And he goes, "Why would you throw your entire life away?"
Hmm.
Yeah,
So why do you think he had that reaction?
because I was already a very successful business person,
Right.
and I would be throwing everything that I worked so hard together to
Mhm.
go back to medical school and take on a whole bunch of debt.
Right.
And why would I go take that
Yeah.
kind of risk on
Yeah. Yeah. And how old were
all
you?
37 at the time?
There's I mean, lots of people change their careers in their 30s. I mean, it's so young, you know?
I would agree,
Mhm.
and so but this was, like, a really big, I think, stepping stone for me
Mhm.
of, like, I'm no longer going to live life how he thinks I should live it.
And also, it sounds like you were changing your environment of the people in your circle,
Yeah.
which, like, honestly is one of my number one recommendations to anyone that's
Oh god.
suffering. Like, before you, like, mentally diagnose yourself and, like, say that you're a bad person and all these things and you're not doing well, look at the people around you. Do they have your best
100%.
interest?
Well, I go back from there. So I knew in that moment, like,
Mm,
in this time and space of this leave of absence of this job, I'm starting to
mhm.
reflect, right? And okay, maybe medical school wasn't the way to go, but I was realizing part of the reason I was exploring going to medical school is I was not happy with what I was doing in my corporate
Yeah.
career.
Mhm.
And so I go back in after my leave of absence and
Mhm.
I'm just like, I can't do this anymore.
Yeah.
I was so miserable. And
Mhm.
so with nothing lined up, I just quit.
Yeah,
I
and
quit. I'd
that's
been there for 11
courageous.
years.
That's such a courageous thing to do because, like, everyone always has, like, a backup plan or an exit strategy, but sometimes you can't cope anymore, like, you just
Um,
hit your limit, and also, like, it sounds like making the decision to move on from your ex-partner, setting boundaries with your family, that creates more confidence. It's almost like infectious, right? When you start walking on the right path, then more decisions are made that are in your best interest and things move quicker, like life moves quicker, like in a
yeah,
positive direction. So it sounds like that was a turning point for you with your addiction was like, I don't have to wear this mask anymore. Like,
yeah,
who am I? Because you said that you didn't know who you were through addiction.
yeah.
So it's like you're almost like starting from scratch, which isn't fun, but I'm sure it was exciting and on some level for you too at that time.
I think there so the interesting thing is, and this is, throughout my entire recovery, one of the
Mm,
things that I've come to realize, somatically speaking, fear and excitement
mhm.
have the same physical response.
Really? That's so
Yep.
interesting.
So your heart's gonna race, your palms are gonna get sweaty, you might get that frog in your throat,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
If you are afraid, you're gonna get the same exact physical response in your body as you are when you're excited.
Mhm.
So anytime you feel fear, if you can start mentally to
Mhm.
shift that into excitement,
Mhm.
transmute that fear into excitement of a new opportunity. It's something new, it's something different. What can I get out of this? How can I change this? How can I, right? You
Mhm.
can turn that fear into something that actually is going to benefit you.
I love that. I think that I saw to that, but I didn't grasp that. Like you explained it really simply for me to understand. So thank you.
Yeah.
Because yeah, I think when we get fear and panic, we want to push it away, but it's our body like pushing us forward and propelling us to do something like that's meant for us as well. Like it's like adrenaline. Like
It
yeah.
really is. And I think this is where a lot of times people kind of struggle with, you know, moving forward, overcoming these things, right? You say surviving, like
Mhm.
surviving surviving is only half of the coin,
Yeah.
right? You have to be willing to kind of flip the coin to the other side and make the
Mhm.
change.
Yeah.
And people get overwhelmed by the fear, right? And that's why I love this act of like looking at that fear as change.
Mhm.
And I think about this as depending upon what your like level or flavor of excitement is, right? And it could be a matter of maybe scary movies. Maybe that's the picture that you put in your head. Maybe it's just the feeling of like I love swings, right? I love to go on a swing. So maybe it's the exhilaration of what it feels like just to feel like that wind in your hair and that
Mhm.
exhilaration. Maybe I also love to jump in a pool. Like there's nothing that just like standing on the edge of a pool and being able to cannonball is like so
Yeah.
I think about that fear and I think about being able to take it and turn it into those feelings. And so whenever I feel that fear creeping up of like, I've got to make a call to someone or I've got to make a
Mhm.
change or I've got to do something and it invokes that level of fear, right? And it's often because we are not practiced enough on doing good things for ourselves,
Yeah.
especially those of us that grew up in households with trauma and abuse,
Mhm.
right? We've grown up learning how to just survive and be safe, which often does not mean taking risk.
Right. And I think you're dead on with that because we have prerequisites as to why like we are allowed to do this thing. And when you're telling your father, I want to go to medical school, like that's you finally finding like the courage and believing in yourself. And then in some shape or form, I'm sure you did want that approval. And then it's like no, like you've reached this level which I approve of, and I don't think you should go further. And so when you moved on and you changed career after quitting your job, you're sitting with like this blank canvas of like what can I do with my life? Um can you tell us about while you were figuring that out, because I know a lot of people listening are not there yet and they're in like such a hard place, right? I would like to know, how did you deal with like the grief of like carrying all of that trauma from the past while you were also building a new life for yourself? Because there is a grieving process with leaving the old version of yourself behind to
Mhm.
step into the new one.
I I love that you're bringing that up, Zoe. I don't think that we talk about grief in life enough. Every single change that we experience in life experience brings about grief. I don't care how big or small that change is.
Mhm.
Changing a job, changing a relationship, leaving a friendship behind, changing a home, everything. So you're spot on. And grief requires time and space. You
Mhm.
can't rush it.
Yeah.
And so for me in that particular instance, like I was blessed that I'd been there long enough and had enough respect in the organization that they did give me um a little bit of buffer to walk away
Mhm.
with,
Yeah.
right? So I was very, very blessed on that regards. Um, and I took it. And the biggest thing that I wanted was that time and space. And so
Mhm.
I, I would do every morning, I would get up and it was actually this room right here. I had it set up as a little yoga room and I would have a space heater in here that would turn on a timer early in the morning. So it would be about like 85 in here
Mhm.
and I would do 90 minutes of yin yoga, which is this like,
Mhm.
for anybody that's not familiar with yoga, I'll tell you it's probably the hardest yoga that you could ever do. For anybody that's familiar with yoga, you might agree,
Mhm.
you might not, but you get into a pose and you have to hold that pose for like 3 to 5 minutes.
Mhm.
And the hard part isn't, excuse me, the hard part isn't necessarily the holding of the pose because you're often supported.
Mhm.
The hard part is the quiet and the
Right.
stillness,
Yeah.
right? And so for somebody that had been a workaholic and go, go, go for so many years of her
Mhm.
life, It was hard. 90
Yeah.
minutes.
Yeah.
And then I would lay there in Shavasana at the end and I would talk to spirit. And that was the first time that I started to call spirit towards me.
Mhm.
And I just wanted, I asked, and I said, I never want to find myself in a situation like that again. I
Yeah.
never want to find myself giving myself up again.
Yeah. So it's almost like you didn't push the grief away, like you almost like
No.
welcomed it,
Hmm.
and almost like it was a companion for you while you were
Oh,
starting your new journey. Um, and I think that this is a great transition to talk about spirituality, calling yourself a witch, being
hmm,
a psychic medium. Some people don't believe in any of those things. Um, can you explain to our audience what does it mean to you to be those things?
yeah. Well, I don't know that anyone would argue with the concept that we as a human being are compiled of the mind, the body, and the spirit, right? And so from a mind, we have our mental processes. From body, we have the physical processes. And from the spirit, I think every individual is going to define what their own spiritual beliefs are. And that is
Mhm,
spirituality, like
mhm,
having some connection to what spirit is to you, right? And
mhm,
for some, they're going to define that as a religious belief and a religious dogma. For me, I identify as a witch.
mhm,
Right? I identify as a witch, and I have been for my entire life. But I was born and raised Catholic, and
mhm.
for anybody else that's ever been born and raised Catholic, I will just tell you, you've been practicing witchcraft most of your religious life. I mean, you ever been to a Catholic mass? I've never seen a more witchcrafty ritual performed in my life. I mean, they are just it's a very, very like witchcraft related practice. I'm just blown away sometimes at how they like cannot see some of the practices in it. They just happen to have one god that they work with. They're just not pagan. Um so the definition for me, as far as a witch goes, is the belief in psychic abilities. So I have not just the belief, but the practice of, right? So the
Mhm,
belief in the practice of. So, I have this beautiful connection to my psychic gifts. I can see things within my mind's eye. I can hear, I can feel, I can just know, if I'm actually connected to spirit on the other side, smell, taste. I can read minds, which is a really weird one as well. And that's been throughout my entire life. And I've had it proven over and over again. If people don't wanna believe it, that's fine, but I have enough
mhm,
proof and people that have validated it that I know that it's true.
mhm,
The second thing is the practice of magic, and magic is believing that we have the ability as an individual to use energetic for, to be able to shift and change through
mhm,
intention, right? And prayer, right? So for
mhm.
every individual that has ever prayed to their own god or deity, that is an act of magic.
Yeah.
Right? That is setting an intention and praying and, setting it forward out into the universe. Which is many of us love to go above and beyond, and we have spells.
Mhm,
I bring up the Catholic mass, because that is a full-blown ritual, right? That has a very prescribed, that's what a ritual is. It's a very prescribed act that you do the course. But yeah, you have an intention as to what it is intended to do, right? What
mhm,
is it intended to bring about? Um, and, yeah, all sorts of, different things. And then last but not least, from a witch's perspective, I believe we're to be of service in the world. And it can be as simple
mm,
as being a mother raising children or a father or parents raising their children, or literally having a purpose to make a difference within this world. So I do believe
yeah.
that those are the three pillars that a witch stands upon. Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting because I'm always on TikTok and I'm seeing information about witches. And I'm always like, I grew up watching Practical Magic and, you
Mhm.
know, all those things. And I also think the Salem witch trials have become like
Mm.
more talked about like lately, over the last couple of years and things like that. I'm very open minded, but I mean, there's hesitation too. Like, I feel like, um, for myself and like lots of people, what would you say if someone is experiencing like psychic abilities or they are feeling like energies and it scares them or something? Like what would you say to them with how to deal with it?
If it scares them, I mean, I would encourage you to explore where the fear comes from in the first
Mhm.
place.
Mhm.
If it's just because you don't know, right? If you're just
Mhm.
unfamiliar, do the research, find out
Yeah.
what it
Yeah.
is, right? Every single one of us has these gifts. We have these abilities, right?
Mhm.
It's a God-given gift and ability that we
Mhm.
have, right? Even if we want to talk about um if we want to talk about any of the religious beliefs, like we want to talk about Jesus or the prophets or anything of that, just because I
Mhm.
have a Christian background, right? They heard from God. They heard, like, that is a psychic ability,
Mhm. Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So if they were to see God or they were to see an angel, or if you hear any of these religious folks and they see angels, these are psychic
Mhm.
gifts.
Yeah.
God gave these gifts. So
Mhm.
if you're afraid of them, I would encourage you to start first by doing research to understand a little bit more of
Mm.
what they are,
Yeah,
right?
I mean, I think that's helpful to anyone that's listening because, like, when people think of witches, they think of like Halloween and scariness and whatever. But, like, from everything that you're describing, it's another form of spirituality.
Hmm.
And I think we should be open to all forms of spirituality. And so many different cultures, have different gods. So, um, it's interesting.
So I think the reason why it gets a bad rap is because they think about the darker sides of it, right?
Yeah.
They think about the stuff, and don't get me wrong, right? If somebody had the power to say a prayer and it create harm,
Mhm,
anybody should be worried. I don't care if
mhm.
they're a witch or a Christian,
Yeah.
right? Hatred is hatred.
Mhm. Yeah.
Right? It doesn't matter what spiritual practice that you have, hatred is hatred.
Yeah.
Right? Whether somebody identifies as a Christian, as a Muslim, as a witch, as a,
Mhm,
Hindu, it doesn't matter what the religious
mhm,
or the spiritual belief somebody has. If they have hatred in their heart, that is hatred in their
mhm.
heart,
Yeah. It's
right?
it's really interesting. Like, how does it feel for you, like, when you meet somebody or someone comes to you? I don't know if you do readings or if you
Mhm.
just feel energy, like, what's the process that you can get in tune to, like, their lives and their energy and know what's going on and mind reading?
Um, there's a couple of different types of readings that I'll do when I sit down with individuals. If people have just want a general psychic reading, a lot of times they'll have questions that they have. And so if they
Mhm,
ask me questions about what's going on in their lives, I can usually just pause and ask, right? I can usually
mhm,
pause and get pictures. Sometimes we'll hear words. I might tune into my little body and feel where it's at within my body. So I literally just like pay attention,
mhm,
right? I'm just consciously aware of what kind of information I may be getting through my additional senses, right?
yeah,
From a mediumship perspective, I'll ask them specifically to come forward, right?
mhm,
So I'll ask whoever it is to come forward. I'll try to find, I do what is referred to as evidential mediumship. So I'll try to find evidence as quickly as possible that that's the individual. So it'll be something to prove,
mhm,
it'll be like a song, a name, some memory, something that's, proof,
mhm,
and then we'll go forward to have a conversation with that loved one or spirit on the other side, depending upon what it is. Um, Another one that I do is I do open up the Akashic records as a psychic medium, meaning I can go into past lives
mhm,
and look to see where, and that's a little bit more complicated where I've got a method where I'll explore why people are trying to find this out in the first place.
mhm.
And that will trigger for me where the story lies, like where we
Right.
go into the past life.
Yeah.
And then we'll dive into that and I'll, pull a record and be able to see the books. But yeah, I've been doing it professionally. Like I said, it's wild. And I've been thinking about it because historically I've marketed these services, but
Mhm,
now with the transition, with some of my work, I'll still offer them, but I'm no longer going to like actively email or
Right.
advertise or anything of that nature. And I told my whole like audience this past week, and I was like, oh, and I've got emails back of like, so proud of you, so glad. But it's just weird, 5 years of doing this, and I've, traveled throughout the Midwest here and done shows and thousands of clients over the course of the
Mhm.
last 5 years. And yeah, so it's it's been a really lovely experience. And um yeah, it's different with everyone, but yet the same.
Yeah. I understand what you mean. I'm quite spiritual, so I think like we're all connected in some shape or
Hmm.
form. And I love hearing about people's past life regressions. I just find it so interesting. Is that how I say it? Past life regressions? Is that what it's
Yeah, a past life regression is slightly different, where you will take and put somebody into a hypnotic state.
Okay.
And so, not that I can't do that, I will give an individual an opportunity. And most of the time, people want me to tell them
Got
what I
it.
see,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
Versus put them into the hypnotic state.
Mhm.
So, but yeah, it's always a
Yeah.
fascinating
What was the one
experience.
that you mentioned? Was it
It's in Akashic Records. So, the Akashic Records is the belief that every single soul has a written record of
Mhm.
its past, present, and current
Mhm.
existence. Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, it is, it's becoming more and more common these days to explore past lives and our purpose,
Mhm.
as souls. So you mentioned that being a witch is like part of service, and I found that really heartwarming. You said that you've talked to, thousands of people, using your psychic abilities. Has there been one instance where you really felt like you helped someone, gain clarity or peace that moved you?
I I don't really know that I could say there's been one. I mean, there's been so many folks that come back around and tell me. Literally just yesterday, I had somebody that I did a reading for a year ago, that messaged me and just said, we'd connected with some of their loved ones on the other side, and they were just very grateful because their grandfather came through and said they needed to be aware that there was going to be some work needed, like big work needed on the house, and they needed to start saving.
Mm.
Right. And so this person said, they're like, I'm really glad you told me to do that, because I did. I started squirreling away money. And then this past March, we had a leak on our roof that caused a tremendous amount of damage that was very costly, and I wouldn't have been able to afford it.
That's so funny. That's such like a grandfather type of advice.
Yeah. Yeah, so I mean, all sorts of times where I've had, people sit down. I will tell you the things that I've really loved probably the most, though, and this is, I think, part of what has even led me to doing the work now in the shift is I've had a handful of folks. Almost every single show that I have done, I will have one individual during that show at some point that will sit down that has been struggling with addiction.
Hmm.
And I get to have that conversation with them.
So moving forward to your nonprofit,
Mhm.
right? Because I think that this is kind of really interesting being your purpose. It's kind of finding you in whatever work you do in your life. And you shared with me offline that you just found a church and that you're at this exciting point of your life building a nonprofit. So for everyone listening, the nonprofit is called the Sovereign Phoenix, and it's a gap helping people in recovery. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, I'm really excited about this. I'll tell a little bit of the story. So, it goes back to, I'm talking about, I've been a professional psychic medium for the last 5 years. And so I've,
Mhm.
I've helped. do readings, but I've also helped a lot of individuals explore their own gifts, learn about what their own gifts are, practice their
Mhm,
own gifts. I've done this for the last 3.5 years where I've offered workshops and classes. And here I thought that's what I was going to be doing, right? And so I left my corporate job a year and a half ago thinking
mhm,
I'm going to go full speed ahead and just start, helping people explore their gifts. And And I'm like out of corporate for a month and I'm sitting there and I'm in meditation and I hear spirit say, "Are you ready?" And I'm like, "Okay, for what?" And they're like, "You're going to help witches in recovery." And I'm
mhm,
like, "Okay." And I'm like, "But I thought I was going to do this psychic stuff, right?" And they're like, "No, you're going to help witch." So I literally started everything back over from scratch pretty much,
mhm,
right? And I'm like, "Cool, I dig this, right? This is me, this is part of my recovery journey." I actually love this thought. And then it's this past winter, and you said that I got a church. So I didn't actually get a church, but I jokingly think about how cool it would be to buy a
Oh,
church
I'm sorry.
building. No, no, no. I love that you mentioned it because I jokingly, and I start like joking with people like,
Mhm. Yeah,
we're gonna buy a church, and it's funny because right by my
yeah,
house, this little church was for sale, and it's now for sale again. So I'm
yeah,
like,
yeah.
maybe.
Oh, yeah,
Uh,
now I remember, yeah, you're, like, looking.
yeah. So I'm like joking that I'm gonna buy a church. Wouldn't it be cool to do ritual at a church building?
Mhm,
And so spirit has interesting ways that it shows up for us sometimes. So this is
yeah,
why like it's so important to kind of just pay attention, right? Just to the little things. And so at some point, this is in like February, in some point, I'm probably guessing it's like the end of April, once again in meditation, spirit starts talking to me that it's not the building that's important, so to speak, like a physical structure of a church.
mhm,
It's the creation of
mhm,
one, so to speak.
hmm,
And so, lo and behold, it's not just helping witches in recovery, it's creating and formatting and building a nonprofit, a religious nonprofit
mhm,
to help witches in recovery, to help individuals that want to embrace this incredibly magical spiritual path, right? This very eclectic, strange, and unusual, right? For those of
mhm.
us that grew up in the same, time frame, like ever watched The Craft, we are the weirdos, mister,
Yeah,
right?
I love that movie.
For all of us weirdos,
Yeah,
this spiritually protected religious fellowship for
mhm,
folks that are in recovery, because I believe that if we don't have something to protect our spiritual beliefs, that's gonna be built to help fight and protect them, then we risk a relapse. We risk
mhm,
returning back to the substance, to the person, to the toxic relationship, to the mask,
mhm, yeah.
to whatever it is that once robbed us from living the life that we actually truly desired to live.
I find that so inspiring, and, I was just thinking about how you said, like, when you're doing your work, usually you stumble across someone that has addiction in their past, and it's interesting, like, the link between people in pain, like, can have, like, that spiritual awakening,
Mm,
whether it's, psychic abilities or whatnot. Um, I just think that that's very interesting that it's people who hit rock bottom, like, wherever they're at in life, um, like, go through this massive spiritual awakening. And would you be open to other people other than witches,
mm,
like, who are going through this type of stuff to help as well? Like, because I honestly feel like there are so many people out there that are struggling, and they are just going through becoming the new version of themselves. And they don't really have any advice, like, if they are moving into that spiritual world that is
Mm.
pretty much condemned, like, by the norm of society, right? Like, even, like, near-death experiences have only just been talked about as, like, like, these happen, like, there's been, I can't remember the author, but writing a book on how many thousands of people that have never met all have the same near-death experience. Like, there's
Yeah.
something out there that's bigger than us, and when you realize it, it can become, like, pretty isolating and lonely. So what would you say to someone listening that's going through that and they don't have the psychic abilities, or like would like groups and you know communities, like, could they be a part of to like learn more about their spirituality?
I would say absolutely. I had this conversation with even a friend last night. There's a reason I chose to refer to it as the sovereign phoenix,
Mhm.
right? It's because you get to choose. The whole label, the whole word of sovereignty is you get to choose your path in life. And the phoenix is all about transformation.
Right.
And so this is opening the door. There is no judgment.
Mhm.
Right? There is no judgment. The beliefs are written, the beliefs, and you can visit thesovereignphoenix.com and read the beliefs right
Mhm.
now. And if
Yeah.
they resonate with you, you're welcome.
Yeah.
You are absolutely 100% welcome, right?
Mhm.
I will tell you, I've created it for the witches because we don't have a place.
Yeah.
I told my friend last night because she considers herself a heathen, which is, an individual that practices a very strongly Viking background. I'm like, you're welcome. Please bring all of your brethren because
Yeah.
I know if you guys don't have a place, this is why it's referred to as the
Mhm.
sovereign phoenix, is
Yeah.
because I'm not here to dictate or to tell anybody how to live their life, but I will sure as heck create the space to make sure that you're safe to do it.
Very cool. Thank you for sharing that. And we'll put all of the links to your websites
Yeah.
and socials in our YouTube bio and description. So, Sunshine, we have talked a lot today and we've unpacked a lot about your life and trauma, being a survivor of addiction. Um, and one question I love to ask all of my guests, and take your time answering it because it's a hard one, is if you had to give yourself, your past self who was struggling and surviving, one bit of advice to get through one of the worst days of your life, just to survive that day, what would that be? Because our listeners could also be going through that. And, sometimes we think it's like this big, like, breakthrough moment, but it is also the small moments that, can teach us, like, this is what I need just to comfort me to get through the day. Um, what would you tell yourself to survive?
What comes to mind is pick one of these three things
Hmm.
and give yourself a little bit of time to do them. Find some time to do either a little bit of magic, a little bit of music, or a little bit of art.
That is so nice.
Yeah.
Magic, art, and music. And why do you think that that would resonate with your younger self?
These are the three things that in my first year of recovery grounded me and probably helped start
Mhm.
to transform and transmute and heal me in ways that
Mm.
I just can't even begin to describe. The magic of returning back to what truly was a part of me for a long time that I denied,
Mhm.
the art, which is something that I hadn't picked up in a really, really, really long time, and the music. I mean, I'll be real honest with you. I chose for a really long time to allow whoever I was with to play the dial.
Mhm.
So they were the ones that got to pick the music.
Mhm.
So when I stepped into recovery, I was the one who put the playlist together.
I love that. It's like, what is most people say these days that always look at, like, what you did in your childhood to know what you would like to do now, and
Mhm.
sounds like you really, like, went back to, like, what your inner child enjoyed and
Mhm.
or what they didn't get to enjoy, and
Mhm.
you were able to, like, live in that present moment and explore your next path. So, thank you so much for joining us today. For our listeners, are you able to just tell them one more time where they can find you online and any of your services?
The best way to find is to visit soberwitch.life. You're gonna find everything that you need there. Yeah.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Sunshine.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure.
This was such a fun talk.